Welcome to another Prepper Talk Radio episode, Radio for the Ready-Minded. You're here with your hosts, Paris, Scott, and Shane. We're live and coming at you on Facebook, YouTube, and our Facebook group as well. So we'd love to get to know you more and by joining our Facebook group at it's called Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance. Please go to our website at preppertalkradio.com and download our free resources. Also, we've got some links to some great things there that you can either download or great links to things that we do and we have that will help you in your prepping journey. So today we are going to have this show brought to you by ITM Trading. ITM Trading is one of our favorite companies to talk to about gold and silver. They have a great program for helping you and educating you on ways for you to be able to add gold and silver to your portfolio. One of the cool things about what they have to offer is if you have an old 401k or IRA sitting around doing nothing, or you're worried about what it's going to do in the stock market, they can actually have that money transferred and have it get gold. And that's a great way to hedge against inflation and a great way to have some precious metals in your portfolio. So give them a call. Let me put that across the bottom here. Give them a call at 866 257-0481. That's 866-257-0481 for a free consultation. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything, but they'll tell you ways that you can add gold and silver to your portfolio and why. So today we're going to talk a little bit about it's going to be some real talk about some reality checks. We're going to talk about, some of the things that we should be doing to make sure that we're not delusional in our preps, not delusional in our walk with God, and our delusional in our walk with our family, our delusional in our as citizens, and we're paying attention to what's really going on in the world and with what we're doing as citizens of the world. So we're going to talk a lot about reality check today.
Yeah, basically my thought was I don't want to be in denial of anything, right? The word cognitive dissonance is what pops into my head. And I've noticed over the years of once I learned about that definition, I've tried to identify that in my own head, in myself. Do I experience any cognitive dissonance? And the answer is absolutely yes. And I'm, of course, more keen of it nowadays, and try to do a little more about it because I'm aware of it, right? So, I guess I could share a few things. I don't necessarily want to go too heavily into this because I've got a huge list of things that that may be causing some dissonance in your lives. It doesn't mind some conflict, some confusion, but every time I learn more, I get more information. Then that may cause a little conflict in my mind that I got to sort out, right? So, I think the important thing is to be honest with yourself and try to understand and realize what reality is. Maybe start there. Start what is reality and start there and move forward. Does that make sense? Am I making sense, guys?
Yeah. Like, to me, it's like you think about where are we right now? And I'm going through some goal setting processes, and at the same time, I'm actually interviewing with a company. And it's funny because they keep going into goals, they keep going into like benchmarks and how you check if you're meeting your targets. And I'm just like, man, it all comes back to accountability, and that's really what you're talking about. Like, taking time and checking your own personal accountability. Am I on the right page? Am I doing the things I said I was going to do, or am I crazy? Am I crazy like a fox or crazy like a lunatic? Right? Is that kind of what you're thinking? Because
Yeah, I
that's kind of
think
what it
so.
sounds like to me.
I think so because I see family and friends who don't have my viewpoints, who don't, they are so positive about the world, and I can be very negative at times, right? And it's very contrasting. Like, am I wrong somewhere? And as time goes by, and I watch the markets, and I think, oh, this should have happened by now, or that should have happened by now, or are people not seeing these things? I mean, that are so blatant, yet we are so convinced, or the mainstream tries to convince us, or they lie to us. It's called what's the word I'm looking at? Is gaslighting is one thing
Oh
that
yeah,
that is more and more obvious to me because I've learned what it is, and I can learn to spot it. So trying to realistically think to myself, like you said, am I crazy? Am I thinking wrong, or am I my belief still based in truth and righteousness, or the correct? That's what that means to me. Reality check means to me, because there's so much that can lead us astray and pull us off, and I get too hyper focused on certain things and try and come back to reality. That's a brief overview of what I wanted to talk about today, I guess.
I think another part of that is that sometimes we get so well, at least for me anyways, this may not happen to everybody, but one of the things that I found is that as a financial guy, especially this came to me, this hit me like a ton of bricks one day. As a financial guy, I'm telling people all the time about how to manage their money, how to set up budgets, how to be wise with their spending, and how to, make sure they're saving and make sure they're getting the right, insurance and retirement plans. I'm doing all these things for them. And I'm talking about it so much that I'm convinced, because I talk about it so much, that I must also be doing it myself. And the reality
Yeah.
is that I was doing it, but nowhere near to the level of what I would advise. If I was my own
Yeah.
advisor, I was nowhere near where I should have been, if that makes sense. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's a specific example. So let's extrapolate that to prepping. You're talking to your friends about everything going on in the economy. You're talking to your friends about everything that's happening in the world, about what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on with North Korea, what's going on with China and Taiwan. You're talking to them about what, Xi Jinping just said to his, military. But are you actually yourself, realistically, like, actually, if you were to go into your pantry and you were to go into your food storage, or are you really ready? Like, do you just talk about it so much that you've convinced yourself you're ready and you're prepared?
Hmm.
Or are you actually ready? Like, if they're, oh yeah, I got my guns and blah, blah. Well, okay, but do you go to training? Yeah, I know how to, if somebody came at me, I know what to do. Good. But do you go to training? Like, do you know
Right.
every day? Are you deluded because you talk about it so much, or are
Hmm.
you actual reality check? Yeah, I talk about it and I do about it. Then that goes back to the Bible. We should be hearers. We should not be hearers of the word only, but also doers of the word. And I think that's a big part of what I think as a reality check, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, of course, the word that came to my mind was hypocrite, right? Am I hypocritical in my speaking, right? And of course, us being here and talking to everybody and recording ourselves and broadcasting ourselves, uh, I personally, I want, I guess, everybody to know that I take that very seriously. I try not to be braggadocious. I try not to, and maybe I come across that way. If so, I apologize. I don't mean to. I'm trying to be as real
We
as
brag
I
for you,
can be.
Shane.
Well, I appreciate it. No, I don't know if I appreciate it, but and I try to live what I preach. Right, I really, honestly do. But I would love evaluations from Scott, Paris, you guys as well, to bring some reality to my life. My wife definitely puts me in check. My kids, and which causes me to think and then reflect and make some corrections. So it's a process for me. But I think I wouldn't say I've got it down, but I'm figuring it out, and it's making more and more sense to me every day.
Well, okay. So you mentioned your wife is a good reality check. Your kids are a good reality check. So, and we are. I mean, we're all talking about things all the time. And for those of you guys who are, either new to our audience, or maybe aren't listening very often. Here's the biggest thing. It's like we talk about stuff all the time, and we have texts and chats and stuff going behind the scenes. Plus, we're in the group a lot, so it's like we're hit with it more, I think, than somebody else that might not think about it as much and accountability check themselves as often. But like to be brutally honest, I'm not doing enough right now. I've got other things that I've kind of made a priority. And that is honestly to my negligence to my own demise, right?
But you're real with yourself. I mean, that's, I think, more important, right? You've got to be critical of yourself. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you've got to be critical of yourself, and you got to say, okay, I know what I need to do. Either I'm unable to do it or whatever the reason is, but like Paris was saying, not think you're doing more than you're actually doing, or that you're not as prepared as you actually, as you actually are, right? You're far less prepared than you think you are. And that takes quite a bit of evaluation, I think.
I think that's everything in life. Like we try to walk, a lot of men out there are trying to be more masculine and walk with God and do things they're supposed to do. But then when they come home, they're tired or they're overwhelmed. And so they don't treat their wife right, or they don't treat their kids right, or they do something that they know they shouldn't be doing. And there's a reality check there that, you know what, you got to set that right. You got to make that right. Because the most important thing, for example, today, my daughter, who's getting married in a couple months, she was having a little bit of a on the ledge moment. And I said, you know what, I can either take the hour or take whatever time is necessary to help her get her off the ledge, or I can go to work, or I can go do my business, or I can go, finish my workout, whatever. I can't remember what. Anyways, the point is that I decided that the most important thing in my life at that moment was my daughter. And so the reality check for me was, yeah, did I have a ton of to-dos to do for my business? Yeah. Did I have a ton of to-dos to do for my other stuff? Yeah. But the most important thing for me was to take care of my daughter's mental health at that moment and give her some good counsel and some good advice as her father and as the patriarch of our family. And totally made her day. Like we cried, we laughed, we hugged. It was great. And I was like, you know what? Later, I did have to fight some temptations, like, man, I shouldn't have taken the hour. Like, what am I doing? The devil comes at it. Yeah. The enemy's like, well, you wasted all that time. Now you've got to double up on your, work effort. And maybe I do, but the point is that I did the most important thing at the moment that it was the most important to do. And I think that's another part of reality check with what's going on in the world today.
Yeah, your beliefs and your values need to line up with your actions, and I think that equals reality. I'm just.
And it doesn't always happen, but when it does, boy, I feel like I'm a good man.
And I had that same experience or similar experience with my daughter. She wanted me to sit down and watch a movie with her, and I wanted to work on my blog. There's a lot of things I need to do. I'm like, this is the right thing to do, and so that's what we did. And so I'm exactly on the same page with you there, Paris. Absolutely,
that's cool.
Well, it's funny because I thought for sure by now you'd be bringing up somebody, I don't know, like Jordan Peterson, talking about reality checks and personal accountability.
Well, let's see what I can Google here.
Because he's on it, right? And it's funny because you can look at any podcast and so everyone's going to cover this type of topic, whatever type of podcast it is, unless it's just purely entertainment. But accountability and time management, like if you're not good at it now, when things go sideways, you're going to be screwed. You're not just going to be in trouble. You're going to be possibly decimated because of your own inability to be honest with yourself, your own inability to double check things, triple check things, and make sure you've actually done what you think or what is necessary.
So the word I just found here is it's just another synonym of reality check. Of course, I found some stuff on Jordan Peterson, but and I lost the word here, the opposite would be like misconception, right? Or just, let me see if I find that word again here that I just lost. Clarification, clarifying reality. That's the word, just clarifying reality. What is truly reality? And I wrote a few things down that are reality that I think a lot of people nowadays, either they're not aware of it or they're denying it. They're ignorant of it or they're in denial. And that's where I wanted to get today is that's the reality check. What is really happening today?
I think another big part of that is that we need to take a check. We need to check our heroes or check who we look up or what we look up to, and place a little bit ahead of other things. Like, are you so focused on a particular candidate that's a political candidate that you're not really looking at the results that are coming? Like, I would rather have results than a particular person. And so I don't care who it is, as long as I get results. And that's a big thing right now. A lot of Americans, we want results because we've had a years of consequences. Now we want some results. And so it doesn't matter who gets in there as long as they produce results. And I'm not talking about presidential elections, although that's a huge thing this coming year.
Everything.
I'm talking about local elections. Like, look at the people. Like, I don't care what party they're in. Are they getting constitutional? Are they getting conservative? Are they bringing good moral values to the table and fighting for them? And that's what I want. Like, I don't, at some point you got to stop, looking at what you're, and the other thing too, is like, really get real with what's happening in the world with the woke agenda coming at us, whether it's in our schools or whether it's with different stores that we shop at. Like, we have to realize that there's a genuine agenda and an enemy that's coming at us, and we need to wake up to it. We need to say, look, the reality is that we're at war. It's a psychological war. Sure. It's not a kinetic physical war yet. It could quite easily get there, but we're in a very real place where we got to wake up to some of the things that are happening and then do something about it so that we can make or at least hold off the onslaught, and then make a good effort to build something that we want, build light, build good things. Let's work toward that. And that's something that I think that too many people are so, they want the next thing coming out, or they want to support the next team on their, whatever. And they're so distracted with the arena and with the Coliseum that they're not really paying attention to what's important going on in their city. They're so interested in who's going to win or that particular candidate that they don't realize that, look, that we need results. Anyways, I'm kind of just winging it here, but those are some of the reality checks that I'm seeing needed, or at least that I'm seeing in the world right now that I think we need.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right on the nose there, Paris, is you use the word war. And I think people need to realize what that word really means, right? It's kind of thrown around lightly, especially lately. You see, we're talking about Civil War, and people are talking about World War III, and it loses its meaning. And so what does it really mean? And I won't get into that, but I think to throw out some more true reality checks. Here's one that hit me like a ton of bricks the other day. Is two stats here. 30% of Americans are behind on their debt payments. How big a number is that, Paris? 30%. That's not a small number. If it was 3%, okay, that's probably normal, right? That's maybe a little higher. But 30% and 40% are behind on their student loans.
That's almost that's probably around 100 million people.
That is enormous.
Over 100 million, because we have over 330 million people in the United States.
Yeah.
So that's like 110 million people are behind.
That's crazy.
Well, and that's just of what's been reported. And we all know the numbers are always deflated. They're never accurate. Because people might be in a repayment buffer period where they're like, here's a grace period we're going to give you, and so it's not reporting yet, or so it makes the banks look better. But if people have like a $400 emergency, they're not ready for it. Most people could not cover the cost of a $400 emergency.
It's true.
And I think it's like 90% of the U.S. population can't handle that right now. I was watching the news a few weeks ago, and they said it was. I was like, I questioned it because I'm like, are you sure it's that high? And they're like adamant that they did the study, and it was like up in the upper echelon of like, holy crap. And so there's now is more than ever in your life is the time you need to be getting your crap together. Sell the stuff you don't need. Cancel all the memberships that don't do anything for you. If you haven't been to the gym in over 30 days, why are you paying for a membership?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can cancel it and you can start it up later. In the meantime, use that money for something better. Do you have 2 Netflix accounts? Cancel one or both. Right? You can stream so much stuff for free from the library. Libraries have all these free streaming services. You can do books, you can do movies, you can do whatever you want, but like spend that time instead of Netflixing and chill. Spend that time learning something, doing something. Pick up a side hustle. Pick up, a project to work on to better yourself, better your family, better your situation. More increased resolve. Like take time to really get better at being prepared. Most people don't know how to deal with their water. That is, I think, the biggest thing I get on social media. People asking me, "Well, what do I do about my water? I don't know how to find new water. I don't know how to source water. I don't know how to clean water. I don't know." And I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, this is one of the most basic fundamental principles of preparedness. And you don't know, and you haven't figured it out. And you're just asking some guy online rather than open a book. Like, that's a reality check. Most preppers, most people who think they're kind of prepping are completely fooling themselves. Because they're storing all this freeze-dried food, or they're like, oh, yeah, my mom and dad bought my little family all this stuff, and it's just stored in the garage. And like, if it's just in Mylar bags, mice are getting in there. Newsflash. Right? You got to have it stored inside food-grade plastic on top of that. It's something tough or robust. And we're not ready as a country, as a community. We're not ready for things to go sideways. Nobody really
absolutely.
is.
Absolutely. That's definitely a reality check, but it has to relate. You have to feel it. What does that mean to me? Instead of, oh yeah, that's happening to these people over there, that doesn't apply to me, right? How does that affect your life? Does it at all? And if we're not feeling it, if I'm not feeling it in my pocketbook, or if I'm not seeing it in the world, it may not be real to me. If I see it on the screen, it's, we see so many movies, we're so involved with entertainment that what we see, our eyes see, can fool us, right? And it may not be. I mean, most of the time what we see on the screen is not real, especially with AI. That's another thing, or part of reality check nowadays.
Okay.
But how do we get that to relate to myself? How do I feel the impact of what Scott just said on myself, and then get rid of that cognitive, that dissonance, that anxiety that maybe that I'm feeling, and do something about it, rather than just sit here listening to us. Hopefully you got your headphones in, you're walking around, you're doing some exercise, or you're doing some other task at the same time, right? That's what I typically do, right? But I know you got to chill at some point of the day too.
Well, yeah, you've got to chill, but you've also got to stop spending more time chilling than being productive. Jordan Peterson actually had an interview, I think it was on Fox News a while ago, but he was talking about, if you want to be happy in life, you need to be responsible. And he said the secret to happiness and happiness in life is responsibility. The more responsibility you take on, the more accomplished you're going to feel as you get things done, the more confident in yourself you're going to be as you do things. And it's funny because, like, if you want something to get done, who do you give it to? The busiest person you know.
Yeah.
They're going to get it done. And not just busy to be busy, but busy accomplishing things. And it's going to get done.
I think another thing to kind of reality check smack in the face is that a lot of times people will watch YouTube videos, how to, and they'll say, well, I know how to do that because I watched a YouTube video. Well, did you practice it? Did you actually go and do something to show, like, did you go through the motions physically with your muscles to actually practice it after you watched it? Because if you didn't, your muscle memory is going to be nothing. Your mind kind of knows what to do, but your muscle memory is going to be so far behind that you're not going to, it's just the other thing too, is that there's a huge reality check, I think, that comes with trust, but verify. Now you can trust us, and you can listen to what we have to say. And I feel like you can trust us, but please go verify. There's so many things out there. We don't have time to bring receipts for everything, but there's so many. If you listen carefully, the mainstream media, I believe, I was watching a podcast today by Patrick Bet David, and he was talking about his predictions for the 2024. And one of his predictions was that this is going to be the last year that mainstream media really has the bulk of the attention for our country.
Interesting.
Because he showed over the last several years how mainstream media has lost percentage of attention. And it was like, it's getting under 30%, which means that there's other venues like podcasts, like our channel, like different places that people are going to get their information. And I was just like, wow, that's really cool. However, that's where you got to be careful. Like, listen to what people are saying, but then do some research, and then be careful about where you're going for that research. Like Google, sometimes they certainly like to filter things with their own agenda. So
every search engine has its own bias.
Yeah.
And their own version of the truth. And that's exactly what you're pointing out.
Mm-hmm. So trust but verify, guys. It's like, there are so many different things that we're hearing from people that. And then another thing too is give something some time. Like if you hear something in the news, and don't just jump on the bandwagon right away. Give it some time, maybe 24 to 48 hours to see how it plays out, because there's several things that came up, and then they're like, well, whoops, we probably should have waited to actually, and you're like, so there's a lot of that kind of noise out there. And I'm sure if you're listening to our podcast, you probably know a lot about what I'm talking about. Just make sure that you're verifying, you're doing your homework, and you're just wise with where you're getting your sources of information.
Yeah, I think what Practical said, did you guys see what happened with the Iowa caucus? Trump just blew it away. Just absolutely blew it away. And that blew me away. I mean, I am not a Trump fan, and I won't go into it, but we are definitely being deceived. Let me say that. I won't go any further into that. But, I think we see plenty of reality every day. We just maybe are denying it. Like, for example, on the news, on the mainstream, yes, I think it's going away. I hope it's going away, but it still needs to be there so they can tell us the lies, so we know exactly what the lies are, right? So, but they are also announcing their plans, right? And I think that's some of the reality, that one of the reasons mainstream needs to stay around is so they can announce their plans. We can see what they're planning. And what are they announcing? They're announcing power outages, internet outages. CBDC is back in the talking topics, all kinds of things like that. So if you ask me, if I hear that on a mainstream, or they're pushing that agenda, that's a reality, or that will be a reality that we need to plan for. Just like Practical was saying there. If I'm getting you right there, Practical.
So it's interesting. There's a game that was created by, I think it was a sociology student, for a doctorate program, but it's basically, I think it's called Werewolf, and it's the deck of cards, 5 or 10 or however many people get, just villagers, and then there's 2 werewolves. And the goal of the game is the villagers to try to identify and kill the werewolves. And what's interesting is they created this game, and they did it intentionally to show that people won't believe the truth, and that if somebody has an edge on them and nobody else can see it, they'll never win. And the trick of it is that the 2 werewolves, everyone's told to like close your eyes and put your head down, and the 2 werewolves look at each other. They're allowed to open their eyes and pick who they're going to kill the next round, right? And then everyone opens their eyes, that person gets killed, and they're like, oh wow. Well, then the villagers, and including the werewolves, all get to pick who they think it is to kill, and debate and argue, and if one werewolf survives, everyone's lost, and you can't win. It's an unwinnable game if you're a villager, and that's how our society is trying to manipulate our situation, right? In an unwinnable game. And so we have to check everything. Like, you got to do the fish test. Does it smell fishy? Does it taste fishy? Well, then it's fishy, right? And have honest debates with yourself on what you're listening to and what you're hearing. I mean, Practical Civilian just pointed out he did a criminal psychology class, and this is fascinating. They did a experiment where they had 10 people who witnessed the same event. They interviewed them all, And during consciousness, they all saw very different details, but under hypnosis, they all recalled the same details. This showed that people don't want to consciously believe what their eyes see.
Wow.
That's profound.
Normalcy
Mhm.
bias. Yeah.
Not only that, but it's like the crowd too. You know, when you get
Mm-hmm.
there's another study that was done that I saw that somebody posted up two circles on the screen, and they were the exact same size. One was red, one was blue, or something like
Yeah.
that. And they said the blue one is smaller than the other one. And somebody said that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I see it now." You know, and then all of a sudden, everybody's like, "Yeah, that one's smaller than that one." And the guy at the front's like, "No, they're the same dang size, people." Like it never changed, but somehow our perception changed, and the reality changed because of that crowd and that kind of that group think,
Mm-hmm.
which is real. And that's something that all of us have to deal with. I mean, are we group think with our political views? Are we group think with our religious views? Are we group think with our financial views? Or are we like, and there's some, don't get me wrong, there's some really positive, good things in group think. There are some things that we need to keep. But just be careful. That's the main, thing is to think, like, be careful. What have you been lured into by groupthink that you could probably let go and be better off?
Well, I think what most people are trying to avoid is being uncomfortable. They don't like the feeling of discomfort, right? That's our day. We want everything to be easy. We want to be comfortable. We want to be taken care of, right? So if that's part of, I think, cognitive dissonance. If you are feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling, there's a whole bunch of different feelings. If you, maybe anxiety. I mean, look how anxiety is nowadays. Everybody has anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even I felt it, a small version of that, and realized what it was. But also, of course, levels of stress and everything from discomfort, and that's brought about by the things we, like you say, Paris, like, and Scott, the things we see, and versus the things we believe, our beliefs, and all that we're fed and we're taught and we're brainwashed and hypnotized. So no wonder everybody has anxiety and stress and doesn't know what to believe. It is traumatic, and that is part of the agenda, is to create trauma. And so
Mm-hmm.
grounding ourselves in reality. But what's the best way to do that? I mean, it's hard to know what the truth is in a lot of cases, right? How do we do that? I mean, I've got some answers. Maybe that's what we need to focus on, is how do we realize what reality is? And if we're going to use that word, there's a lot of other words we could use. Truth is really the best, I think, the best word. How do we realize what the truth is? Because everybody has their own truth nowadays. That's right. Everybody can create their own truth. Oh, that's my truth. It's not your truth, but it is my truth, which is a bunch of baloney.
Have you guys heard about the study with domesticated pigs? What happens when you put them back in the wild?
Mm-mm. Maybe I have, but I don't remember.
So in a few months, in as little as a couple of months, a domesticated pig, the big fat pink pigs, in a few months, they're no longer pink. They're no longer these big fat pink pigs. They actually grow long hair. They grow their tusks out again. They become feral. But it takes time. And what's interesting, it's not that it just takes time. It takes that adversity for them to become what they were meant to be.
Interesting.
Right. And it's interesting because as I was listening to this talk about it, this guy talking about it, he also talked about how when he was young, he went, when he was like 19, he went to this graduation event, and they had all these inner city kids, and his school, which was a suburban school. And he said the most interesting thing was all the kids from the inner city, the boys looked like men. And we who were 19 and 18, we still looked like boys. And it was because they did not have adversity to mature them into what they're supposed to become. And he continued on talking about how the lack of adversity in life today is making domesticated men and women pink, fat little pigs all over the world. And if we don't start forcing ourselves to go through hard things and the trials and the things that mature us, we won't survive what's coming. And that's historically what's happened, is the little pigs go to slaughter. The boars survive.
That's interesting. That kind of leads while you were talking, Scott, I kind of started to think about how we perceive reality now because of social media too. Like, how many of us believe that the world, everybody else, their life is great, their life is wonderful, they have all the vacations, the money, and the relationship because they post 5,000 times a day about all the great things they're doing. And we just sit over here and think, wow, my life sucks because I don't have any of those adventures. I don't have any of that money. I don't have any of that relationship. When the reality is that you probably have a better relationship than they do. Here's an example. I actually don't live, I live very modestly because I don't have credit card debt and I don't believe in it. I'm never going to get into it. Credit card debt, if last resort. And so, like, I don't go on a lot of I save things first and then I spend after I save money. And I was talking to a friend and they're like, they show all these great things on social media, the things that they're doing and the places they're going and the wonderful experiences. And I'm like, man, am I missing out? And what I realized is that person, I actually found out from a source, that person is heavily in credit card debt, like probably tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. And I'm thinking to myself, well, so I had some anxiety and some panic, like, man, am I missing out? Because this person's living this great life. But the reality is I would rather have no debt and the peace that comes from that than have a bunch of debt and be traveling a little more than I should. Of course, I want to travel. Of course, we want to have those experiences, but I'd rather do it the right way, if that makes sense. And so that's something that hits us with social media too, is that there's too many people are up to their eyeballs in debt, and they're showing off, and it's really not real.
It's social pressure. You know, whether it's implied pressure, it's not direct pressure, like, oh, you need to go on vacation, which my wife gives me that kind of pressure. But the social pressure of look at all the fun stuff I'm doing and look at all the nice things I have, definitely creates some of that cognitive dissonance, because in your heart, like, I don't want to be in debt. I know I shouldn't go in debt for this, but I feel pressure, and so there's some discomfort there, and so people tend to give in to that discomfort, right? But then they feel more discomfort later, with the financial troubles you have afterwards. But that's all part of the plan, is to get us into debt and turn us into slaves. I mean, that's and that's a reality, and that's a truth. So if you're based in that truth and based in that reality, you hopefully won't make the bad decisions to go into debt to go on a vacation, as an example, right, of one of many potential examples.
So let's reality check a little bit for 2024. Okay, number one, it's an election year. What can we expect? We can expect more, like, increased disinformation from both sides, increased suppression of free speech from everything. Like, YouTube just announced to us that they're going to cut types of channels, such as possibly this one, right? They're going to cut the freedom of speech on certain topics. And they're not the only ones. Like, we saw this happen on Instagram. We saw this happen on Facebook. We saw this happen pretty much everywhere. And now if you look at TikTok, now that it went public, all the fears of the Senate voting to shut it down in the United States are gone. Why? Well, because now they're all profiting from it. It's all smoke and mirrors to get what they want done. And so we're going to watch more and more just manipulation of every possible thing in our lives. I'm watching the stock market do its thing, and it's all over the place as usual. I'm watching mortgage rates starting to dip, right? And I expect those to dip quite a bit more leading into summer before they stabilize. I don't think they'll be back at the 2.7s. I think they'll stop in like the 5%, low fives, but then they're going to start popping back up, right? But I see this year we're going to see some prosperity for some people who are actually working towards it. And we're going to see more massive inflation and more other things taking off that increase disinformation, increase confusion, and decrease your ability to do something to improve your situation if you're not already doing that now.
Well, yeah, I think the reality is that as the economy gets worse, which I believe that it is. Maybe that's not reality to everyone. That the Fed will continue to print more, which the
Mhm.
reality is that inflation will increase.
Yep.
And but some people will prosper, like you're saying, Scott. Maybe the stock market will go up. Maybe it'll be easier to buy a home. Uh, Reality, I guess, can be different for different people wherever you live. It's going to be slightly different.
I think a big part of reality too is the lens with which we look at it. And I hope everyone will look at the lens of reality through an optimistic, or, we need to be realistic on this, leaning toward optimism. And especially as a preppers, we had a whole episode. I don't remember what number it is, but we had an episode on whether preppers are optimistic or pessimistic. And that's kind of a fun debate to kind of think about. And so the reality is
We
I
don't
think
all agree.
yeah, I think the reality is that if you are properly prepared, you can be optimistic about something because you're awake, your eyes are open, and you're ready to go. And so, if a problem arises, you've got a potential solution. And where the guy who has no idea what's happening, no idea what could happen, has no plans for what might happen, is going to get hit with a problem and be like, deer in the headlights. And that's pessimism to me. So I feel like I hope that everyone's realizing that there are some great things that are coming. I think that that people who are waking up to the reality of these, what we're seeing in the world, whether it's political, whether it's economic, whether it's in our even religious, I feel like everybody should wake up and start to really promote, tell the truth as they believe it, and share. And I think we need to stop being quiet. We need to be. I feel like the enemy is just coming at us so hard with all of their nonsense, with all their activism, with all their woke agenda. They're just bombarding it, and we need to stand up and match that. And I feel like if you become, I just been reading a lot of books lately about different things that are happening in the economy, and there's certain sectors, certain things that will actually grow and be good. And one of those is the creator economy. People who are willing to stand up and share and give their thoughts and opinions about what's going on in the world can actually probably do very well. And then if you take that money and you use it wisely, you invest it wisely into preparedness, into helping others, into really developing something that's worthwhile, I think you're going to see, some good things this year. 2024 as an election year, they're going to, there's two sides. Obviously, there's the ones that want to stay in power are going to work very diligently to do everything that they can to make everything look great so that everybody will want them to stay in power. And then, however, there are a lot of multimillionaires right now. And even I think Warren Buffett recently sold a bunch of stuff and put a bunch of money in cash. When huge investors are putting money in cash, what that means is they're waiting for the fire sale. They're going to put all their money into cash so that they can have it available. As soon as things start to just tank, they're going to swoop in and buy it all up. And so I feel like if you have the ability, probably put some more money into cash and keep it safe for when those opportunities come, because there's a lot, nobody knows. There's no crystal ball, but there's some predictions that the things will get propped up really hard. And you might think, wow, shoot, I messed up. I should have stayed in the market. No, trust me.
Fear of missing out.
You don't want to have that FOMO, but if Trump wins, which it looks like it might happen, you might see a huge crash, but then a huge jump with the excitement that's going to bring. So there's so much. Here's the thing is that there's a lot of up and a lot of down. There's a lot of right and a lot of left. Take a deep breath. The sky's not falling. The earth's not falling out from underneath you. It's going to be okay. The reality is that most of America is conservative. Most of America wants to have good values, and we just need to start standing up and fighting against those small minority that are just being way too loud.
Yeah, I think my final comment is I think the reality is, and of course this is my opinion, is that this year anything can happen. Literally anything can happen. If you're watching geopolitics, if you're watching what's the wars and rumors of wars that are going on, anything can happen. But I tend to agree with you, Paris. It's looking to be a potentially prosperous year for those who are watching, yet a very dangerous year as well. So I'm staying out of the markets personally, Paris.
I'm getting I'm doing the same thing.
I love the markets. I think they're fantastic. I'm kidding. I don't. I you guys all know that I pulled out of the markets years ago. Before any beneficial swings or critically horrible life throws where it just goes down, right? I felt prompted. My wife and I both felt prompted. Time to take it out, and so we took it out and put it into food storage, and we helped some of our family, extended family, get better prepared, getting water filtration devices and food storage, and getting them further ahead. And I tell you what, man, it has been a huge blessing, because when we've gone through our micro SHDF scenarios, there's micro and macro. We're going to go economic terms. Micro is the little ones that happen localized, right? Macro is, more than just your community, more than just your household. It's huge. And what's interesting is that food storage and that preparedness that we've done years ago has gotten us through long periods of not making enough money.
Nice.
And it's like that right there is testament enough to me to continue to prep the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully for you, the listener, is testimony to you that you should be living the preparedness life. Live the ready way. You don't have to be prepared for everything, but I'm telling you, if you can prepare for the major things, a couple of them, one of them, it's going to cover 80% of everything. And it's fantastic, because what most people aren't preparing for is the micro crash, the micro SHTF scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are prepared for those, the macro is a lot easier to get through.
Yeah, I think we'll more likely to see those smaller SHTFs this year than the big one. That's
well. What's interesting, I mean, to speak really quickly to a couple of things that Practical has said, and why there's several comments here. I don't know which one to even put up, but I'll just speak to them a little bit. I've been listening carefully about some of the things that these guys have actually been saying in the newspapers, on the mainstream media about, look, and the reality is that they've tried so many different things to win. The left has tried so many things to win. I mean, we're seeing some unprecedented things with regard to January 6th, with regards to President with Trump, what they're doing to him, the indictments, the crazy things that they're putting him through, and to try to get America and the MAGA movement to suppressed. It's not going to work. And however, I know some of the comments that they've made where they're actually threatening. I mean, they do it very subtly. They do it with their legalese and their subtle speech. They're definitely threatening some kinetic actions where they want to actually physically do things, and that's not fun to think about. And so we need to be ready for it. We need to be prepared for it, and that's real. Like you need to be ready for these guys to get kinetic with us. However, at the same time, if they don't get kinetic, like whether they get kinetic or not, what are you going to do with your life? Like, and that's something that I think about a lot. Like, I'm prepared if they do. But if they don't, then I'm going to keep doing my thing and keep preparing and keep staying ready, keep my head on a swivel, keep my mind thoughtful. I'm listening to what they're saying. And sometimes, here's the thing that I've noticed as I all throughout my last several years anyways, I watched the wicked proclaim their agenda. This is what we're going to do. And then I see God's hand come in and thwart it. And they don't get to do it. And I see all these people who've predicted, oh my gosh, they're going to come knocking on our doors and they're going to throw us on the ground. Or they're going to stick us in the arm with the special juice. And we're going to all have to take it and blah, blah, blah. And that never happened. Maybe in some areas, I don't know, but it never happened to me. And so there was a lot of fear mongering and fear porn, if you will. And I don't want to take away from the reality that might have been what they wanted to do. But I also have faith that God will thwart that especially for those that will follow him and put themselves in a place. There's a set of scriptures that says that God will deliver those that put their trust in him. And I believe that. And call me crazy, but I believe that. And so I don't want to be head in the sand with that. I want to be eyes wide open with that belief, if that makes sense.
Yeah, amen to that.
What's funny is we hear the plans, we know the plans, they tell us the plans, and yet most people are still completely unaware and blissfully unaware of the plans. and blissfully unaware of the need to be more self-reliant, more independent. And it's funny because it's like every one of us on here in the live right now has a relative somewhere in our history that was homesteading, has relatives who lived through the Great Depression, right? We wouldn't be here otherwise. And it's like those lessons are stifled. No one talks about it anymore. But those are the lessons. Those are the tools and the systems. Like knowing food preservation inside and out. Like Sydney Prepstetter, who's in the chat. Like, guys, if you don't know Prepstetter, go follow her. If you have any question on canning, holy smokes, she is a fantastic resource. You need to know these things. You need to start doing these things. And if you're not, when the electricity pops, what are you going to do with all your food? How are you going to keep everything in the freezer from becoming completely garbage within 48 hours? Like, that's how critically weak we all are when we're relying on our current system. And if we don't have the idea of use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without going forward, we're going to run out of a lot of stuff that we need. And we're going to be really weak to what's coming.
All right.
Well, any last minute thoughts, guys?
Well, I'm all out.
Well, I don't know. My last minute thought is this. Like, I've talked kind of, I think, harder than I usually do. More doomy than normal. I'm not trying to make anybody be afraid or worry. What I'm trying to do is help you have greater resolve to do something good, to be better prepared, to actually follow through on the steps that you felt like you needed to do at one point to get you on the path to being a more prepared and free person. But here's what I want to say. There is joy, absolute joy, in living preparedness lifestyle. Having more peace because I have some stuff, having more peace because I have tons more knowledge. That's what I'm trying to get you to chase down, right? Chase down that peace, chase down that joy, and chase down, it's an amazing feeling, but chase down being able to eat something you grew. There's this huge level of gratitude you're going to feel. Like, my cucumbers were an absolute horrible mess last year, but I got a few. They were delicious.
Had too many.
A few more every year, you'll win.
And that's the thing, is like this year I'm going to try some more. I'm going to do more. So do more than you did before. Learn more than anything. Learn more than you did before, and trust in God.
Amen, dude. I think that the reality check for as we close up here, the reality check is just take a deep breath and remember to breathe, and always self-reliance is key. Work towards self-reliance in whatever that means for you, whether it's physical, whether it's financial, social, whatever it is, like preparedness. Just become more self-reliant, where you don't have to rely on others. And then what's cool about self-reliance, what's cool about independence is when you get to the certain level of independence, the highest level is interdependence, where you work together and you cohesively create something. It's like synergistic. It 1 + 1 actually ends up equaling more than 2, because with that synergy, you can create greater things. So work diligently, allow people their agency, allow people to make their choices, and you just keep your head down, keep your shoulder to the wheel. And one day that your example will make a difference. So thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being with us on this Prepper Talk Radio live on YouTube, on Facebook. And thank you so much for all those that have been here making comments, asking questions, providing answers, and supporting one another. We're grateful for our community. We have a pretty stable 9 or 10, 12 people that come on, and we're grateful for you. And so again, if you've been listening to Prepper Talk Radio for the ready-minded, please visit our website, come check us out on our Facebook page, and get involved with us there. Until the next time, stay ready-minded, and we'll see you soon.
See you later.